In this video, we'll be going through how to create a Moodle lesson storyboard, which is essential if you're building any kind of lesson in Moodle. And by lesson, I mean the activity lesson, which I'll go over in videos after this one. This is all how you're going to go about planning out that lesson. So what we'll do here is we're going to take a look at our actual storyboard here. So what we start with is our standard. So when you're working on your, say, your learning outcome statement, or what we call as a SARA's document, your standards, your assessments, your resources, your activities, and your support. Then from your SARA's or your outcome statements, you can design your main lesson topic. So that would be this, and I'll show you what I mean when I throw up an example of what we call a SARA's. So what you're going to do here, it's just a basic flow chart. So we're going to start with what we call a subtopic. We're going to take our main lesson topic and we're going to break it into smaller, specific bite-sized chunks. And from there, we're going to have our students or our learners go through the process of consuming content, checking in to make sure that they understand that content. If they don't, then they move on to something else or they get bounced back to the original content. So let's take a look what I mean here. So with subtopic number 1, they would go through their content. Now maybe it's going to be some text-based, maybe they have to watch a video, maybe they need to look at an infographic, listen to a podcast, or it could be a multiple set of different pages along the way. They might have to look at 2 or 3 pages to consume the content. From there, they would click a button and they would go to what's called a knowledge check. That knowledge check could be either one question or a cluster of questions that would be picked randomly. And again, I will show you how to do this in subsequent videos from here. So if they get that knowledge check answer correct, you'll notice here that the green says go. We can go with the right answer. We can move on to subtopic number 2. They've shown good indication that they understand what was happening with the content in subtopic number 1. Now, if they didn't, if they got the knowledge check question wrong, you have one of 2 choices. You could have them go back to the original content and consume it again and then take another crack at the knowledge check. And sometimes that's a good idea. If there's just the answer was in there, they just need to look or read more carefully. Perhaps you want to take them back up to subtopic number 1. But say you want them to get a little deeper and you know that perhaps maybe they didn't understand the video or they didn't understand the text. So they didn't understand the text, they get the knowledge check answer wrong. Instead of bouncing them back up to read the text again, what you could do is send them to supplementary resources. You could have them watch a video. You could have them listen to a podcast. You could have them look at an infographic. And then from there, based on the same content, not content, but topic, we're going to check their knowledge again. So they'll go through the supplementary, they'll do a knowledge check, and then if they get it right, they move on to subtopic number 2. If they get it wrong, then we'll bounce them back up to the supplementary. Now it doesn't show here, but you can keep going. Oops, one second here while I go back with my sheet here. You can have them, you can just keep adding supplementary after supplementary if you want. Generally, I've found in my experience that I generally stick around subtopic, knowledge check, and then bounce back. But once in a while with the supplementary, that will be all it takes, and it moves them back up to the right answer, which takes them to subtopic number 2. From there, we move from subtopic number 2, we do go through the same process. And so what this storyboard will do is it'll help you plan out the stops and the checks along the way for when you get into actually building the Moodle lesson. If you don't have a storyboard, you could quickly get overwhelmed with the whole process of building a lesson or using the lesson activity in Moodle. Now you'll notice here that I've got 3 subtopics. That doesn't mean that you are limited to only 3. If you go ahead and download the actual Moodle lesson storyboard that I have available here, you'll notice that it can go on. So here's the blank one here, which we'll start filling out in a moment. But you'll notice that instead of up here, I ended it at 3. You'll notice that these go on to another page, which would be here. And so you can go up to 6, or you can go up to 12, or up to 15, I believe, using this storyboard. If you like, you can go on and on and on. You just have to copy the pages over. Now you'll notice here, I've got my subtopic resources. This is the text, the video, and the images that will be needed for your subtopic. Now we've got subtopic here. This would be 1. I've got 3 of them available. So if you have 3 or if you need more, you can just go ahead and copy and your pages over and go through. Again, I'll show you what I mean and how we use these. The text is the text that is going to be in your content. The video is, if you're putting video in here, this would be where you're putting that. And the images. Now, one thing I will note is this text does not mean that you're putting the text that you would put in the Moodle lesson. this is going to refer back to other documents you have saved somewhere else. We don't have enough room to fill out everything into this little text box here. So therefore, we'll just make reference to other documents that we can come back to later. Over here, we have our knowledge check questions. Now, I mentioned that we could either use one question or we could use up to 3 questions, which we call a cluster. This is where we're writing them down. You have different question types. Now, when we're using a lesson activity, you have a multi-choice, which is a multiple choice, short answer, which is basically fill in the blank, or true and false. So you're going to pick, okay, if you have one question, you're just going to write down your question type here, your question, and your answer. If you're going to be using a cluster, pick 3 questions. You could use all the same types. It doesn't matter. It is up to you. Multi-choice, short answer, true to false. You could do one of each. You could do all multi-choice. You could do 2 multi-choice and a true and false. You get different permutations that you can go through here. Now, as we go through this, we've got the subtopics. There is also another type of question, and that's a matching question. And I will show you in the Moodle lesson activity videos that come up how that looks. And then we go on to our supplementary content. It's the same idea. You'll have your text content, your video content, your image content. This storyboard just will make reference to those. So you'll reference document number whatever, and you'll have that in a file somewhere else. Document number whatever, video on this, images that you would like to have or that you need to create. That's what you're putting in here. You're not copying and pasting images onto the storyboard. You're just using this as a reference. My suggestion to you would be to have a folder opened up somewhere else where you're storing all this information. Again, we'll go over that later on in subsequent videos.